Between what you say and what your heart truly vibrates, there is an invisible space. And it is in that space that God responds. Heaven doesn't move through the sound of words, but through the silent vibration of faith. Some people pray with intensity, with tears, with despair, and yet silence seems to be the only answer. But God's silence is never absence. It is a mirror, reflecting the frequency you sustain within. Because God does not respond to what you ask for. He responds to what you believe. And the question echoing right now is, what do you truly believe about yourself? Jesus never said, "It will be done according to what you ask." He said, "It will be done according to your faith." The difference is vast. Neville Goddard explained it this way: you do not manifest what you want. You manifest what you believe to be true. And that's it. You don't live what you wish for. You live what you believe is real. Prayer is a mission. Belief is frequency. And when the two align, reality bends. Let this truth touch your chest. Life doesn't respond to what you ask. It responds to what you vibrate. Feel this. Truly feel it. Because every time you ask from fear, fear is what vibrates the loudest. And the universe, which is only a reflection of what you hold within, simply echoes back the sound of your vibration. When the heart prays in despair, it is really saying, "I still doubt." And despair has a language heaven understands. The language of lack. Life confirms what you believe, not what you desire. But when your faith rises above fear, something shifts. The vibration shifts. The field shifts. Matter begins to respond. Affirm this with an awakened heart. It is not the request that moves heaven. It is coherence. It is not the shout that opens doors. It is the silent faith that unlocks them. Faith is not noise. It is alignment. It is not uncontrolled emotion. It is conscious vibration. Faith is the sound of the spirit at peace with the invisible. And when that sound is pure, the universe responds not because God changes, but because you do. Prayer born from desperation vibrates urgency, and urgency is scarcity. But prayer born from gratitude vibrates abundance, and abundance is faith. When you give thanks before seeing, heaven recognizes the signature of your conviction. That is how the invisible becomes visible. Say it now with a voice that trusts. I don't ask out of fear. I believe out of conviction. I believe out of conviction. Faith is coherence between what the mind thinks, what the body feels, and what the heart vibrates. You may say, "I believe," but if your body is tense and your heart restless, the sound of your prayer is still doubt. Yet, when all of you harmonizes, when breath, thought, and emotion become one song, heaven recognizes the sound of your faith. And in that moment, the impossible loses meaning. Let this truth settle inside you like a sacred reminder. What I vibrate, I live. Again, what I vibrate, I live. God doesn't give you what you ask for. He gives you what you believe, because what you believe is what you are. Prayer isn't an attempt to convince God. It is the act of convincing the body of what the spirit already knows. Faith is not pleading. It is remembering. It's when I want transforms into I already am. Affirm this with gentleness and power. What I believe already is. What I vibrate takes form in Christ. My faith is rest, and my rest is faith. Maybe right now, all you need is to allow this certainty to fill the space where fear once lived. Because when faith arrives, fear no longer has a home. And when the heart vibrates love, the impossible no longer exists. Declare this with an awakened soul. I vibrate as one who has already received. I vibrate as one who has already received. Because faith is not waiting. Faith is vibrating as one who already lives the miracle. And that is why Jesus said, "Whatever you ask for in prayer, believing, you shall receive." The secret is not in the asking, it's in the believing. Faith does not persuade God, it aligns you with Him. And when alignment happens, everything begins to flow. Doors open, answers come, peace returns. And the body understands that heaven is already within. Now affirm this truth with spiritual authority. What I believe already is. What I vibrate becomes visible. I rest in God, and the universe rests in me. And before we move forward, seal this in your spirit. The universe doesn't respond to need. It responds to coherence. And if that is true, and it is, then we must go deeper. Because in the next chapter, you will discover why a prayer born from lack holds no power, and how to turn longing into creation, scarcity into vibration, and desire into living faith. There is a truth that is hard to hear, but liberating once it is understood. Every prayer made in lack is a declaration of absence. And every absence, when repeated, becomes a pattern. Many people pray with sincerity, yet they vibrate in scarcity. They speak of faith with their mouths, but their bodies still vibrate fear. And that is why heaven often seems silent. It's not that God isn't listening, it's that the vibration is still saying the opposite of what the words ask for. The heart that prays in desperation reveals that it still doubts. And the universe, that perfect mirror of the soul, does not understand begging. It understands coherence. It responds to what you truly feel, not to what you try to say. God does not deny. He simply confirms what your inner world believes. Feel this truth now. The universe doesn't read your words. It reads your energy. If within you vibrates lack, the world behaves as scarcity. If within you vibrates fear, life responds with delay. But when within you vibrates faith, even without proof, everything begins to move. Neville Goddard said, "You do not manifest what you want. You manifest what you believe to be true." That is why when you say, "I need," your subconscious hears, "I don't have." And that vibration echoes through the field. You are not being punished. You are simply receiving the echo of your own belief. Let this phrase sink deep into you like a sacred reminder. God doesn't respond to your need. He responds to your consciousness. And consciousness is vibration. Faith is not a loud request. It is a silent state of certainty. You can say 1,000 times, "Lord, help me," but if your heart still vibrates fear, the prayer has not yet crossed the veil of faith. What opens heaven is not desperation. It's rest. Not pleading, but trust. God doesn't move by urgency. He manifests through coherence. Say it now, with a heart at peace. I stop asking for what's missing and start vibrating what already is. I vibrate as one who already has. Because a request born from lack is a seed planted in dry soil. It cannot bloom because there is no faith to water it. But a request born from certainty is a living seed. It grows even in the desert, watered by trust. The universe does not understand "I want." It understands "I am." And the difference is vast. I want vibrates separation. I am vibrates unity. And God dwells in unity. Feel the power of this phrase. I am who God says I am, and that is enough. Let this truth travel through your body. Notice how it changes your inner state. Anxiety softens, the breath deepens, because the body knows when the soul aligns with the spirit. Prayer is not begging, it is tuning. And tuning is not reached through effort, but through surrender. It's not insisting that God should act, but allowing God to move through you. The request is human. Faith is divine. And when the human and the divine meet, the miracle is born. Say it now with a surrendered voice. I do not ask out of lack. I align by faith. I already am what I seek. And that is why I find every time you ask from lack, the universe understands that you are not yet ready to receive. Not as punishment, but as love. Because what is given before awareness is wasted through unawareness. But when your vibration changes, everything that once felt distant begins to find you. Blessings don't need to be chased. They are drawn to certainty. Feel this truth now. My faith attracts what my fear once repelled. Let that phrase vibrate in your chest. It is a code of healing. It reprograms the field. It opens space for the new. Faith is the opposite of haste, and love is the opposite of need. That's why the more you search to fill an emptiness, the more emptiness you create. But when you fill yourself with faith, the void dissolves, because what was missing outside was only the reflection of what was missing inside. Affirm it now with an awakened soul. I do not pray out of fear. I pray in gratitude for already being. In me there is no lack. There is faith. And faith is abundance in motion. God denies you nothing. He simply confirms what you believe about yourself. And perhaps this is the deepest revelation you'll ever hear. Faith does not convince God. It convinces you that He is already in everything. That's why the prayer born from lack runs dry, but the prayer born from presence creates. Because faith creates, fear repeats, and the universe never mistranslates your vibration. Keep this phrase close to your heart. It's the bridge to what comes next. The universe doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to what you have become. And that's what we'll talk about next. How to become coherent between mind and emotion. Because faith is not a feeling, it is alignment. And when your body, mind, and spirit vibrate in the same sound, the miracle stops being hope and becomes a state of being. Faith doesn't begin when you say, I believe. It begins when your body agrees with your words. Because it isn't the speech that moves heaven. It's the coherence between what you think, what you feel, and what you vibrate. The mind may whisper, everything will be fine. But if the heart beats in fear, the vibration is still doubt. Faith isn't positive thinking. Faith is tuning. It's the state where thought and emotion breathe in the same rhythm. It's when the body leaves survival mode and begins to align with the field of trust. Spiritual neuroscience explains, when emotion and intention come into harmony, the brain understands that there is safety. And only when there is safety can the miracle manifest, because fear closes. Faith expands. Fear contracts the field. Faith opens it. Jesus called this, "O you of little faith." It wasn't a rebuke. It was a diagnosis. He was saying, your mind says one thing, but your heart vibrates another. Little faith is this inner division. The soul trying to believe while the body still resists. But when the body and the heart say yes together, The impossible loses its name. Let these words enter your field. I allow my mind and my heart to vibrate the same sound. My faith is living coherence. Have you noticed how the body reacts to what the heart feels? When there's fear, the shoulders grow heavy. When there's doubt, the chest closes. But when there's faith, the body relaxes, the breath expands, the blood flows lighter, because biology responds to belief. Faith at its core is divine chemistry, neuroscience in a state of prayer. Joe Dispenza calls it teaching the body to feel the future before it happens. It's what Jesus meant when he said, "Whatever you ask for in prayer, believing, you shall receive." Believing, that is, feeling before seeing. Those who feel the miracle before the evidence have already entered the frequency of manifestation. The body simply obeys the field, and the field only responds to coherence. God doesn't need you to ask with force. He needs you to feel with truth, because faith is not a loud sound. It's an aligned vibration. It's not intensity, it's coherence. Etch this phrase deep within. What I think, what I feel, and what I believe are in harmony. I vibrate in coherence with the love that created me. When you align, everything changes. The breath changes, the energy changes, time itself changes. The universe perceives your vibrational signature and responds. There is no effort, there is flow, because faith is fluidity. It doesn't force, it flows. Faith is not about erasing human emotions, it's about reconciling them. You can feel fear and still believe. You can feel weary and still remain in a vibration of trust. The error isn't in feeling, it's in letting fear dictate your frequency. Faith is the space where fear is heard, but not obeyed. Say it now, gently but firmly. I do not deny what I feel. I illuminate what I feel. My emotion is not an obstacle, it is a bridge. When emotion is embraced, it transforms. Anxiety becomes awareness, sadness becomes depth, anger becomes purified strength. Emotion is the language of the soul, trying to align with the spirit. And when mind and emotion meet in the same sound, the field reorganizes. Faith is a coherent vibration, and the body is the first altar where it happens. When you feel the truth before you see it, the miracle begins to take form, because faith is vibrational reprogramming. It doesn't ask logic for permission. It asks presence for surrender. Affirm this now with deep conviction. My mind is at peace, my heart is in faith, and my body vibrates presence. Within me, mind and heart speak the same language. True faith doesn't shout, it silences. It doesn't demand, it trusts. It doesn't look for proof. It becomes the proof, because when the heart vibrates in coherence, the universe listens. And when the universe listens, heaven takes form. Engrave this into your soul. It's not the size of your faith that matters. It's how whole it is. A small, complete faith moves mountains. A large, divided faith only exhausts. Faith is harmony, and harmony is stable vibration. The moment your I believe and your I feel become one melody. And when that happens, everything that was confused begins to find its place. I choose to live in coherence. My body feels what my soul believes. My faith is balance in motion, because when coherence is established within, the world around begins to reflect heaven. And it is in that state that God speaks most clearly, not through words, but through vibration. There is an altar within you where every prayer is answered. This altar has no walls, no candles, no temples. It lives quietly in the deepest territory of your mind, the subconscious. It is there that God dwells as a constant vibration, waiting for your thought and your emotion to become a single sound. Because God does not respond to what you say, He responds to what you sustain in vibration. Joseph Murphy once said, "The subconscious is the fertile soil of prayer. Everything you plant there as belief, emotion, or imagination eventually blooms in your reality." That's why repeating words of faith means little if your heart still feeds on scarcity, guilt, or fear. Conscious faith asks, but subconscious faith receives. You can say God is good and still feel unworthy of His love. You can affirm, I believe, and yet hide deep within the doubt that maybe it's not possible for you. But the subconscious doesn't distinguish between what is real and what is imagined. It simply reproduces the dominant emotion. And that emotion creates the vibrational field that shapes everything around you. Heaven is not denying your requests. It is reflecting what you believe about yourself. And the most profound of spiritual secrets is this: God is not testing your faith. He is mirroring it. He does not punish. He confirms. He responds to your most intimate belief. That's why true prayer is not made of words, but of vibration. It happens when your soul says yes to what is already true in God. Prayer is when the body feels what the spirit already knows. It's when the mind stops asking and starts agreeing. It's when the subconscious stops resisting and begins to flow. Say it in truth. I become the altar where God manifests. I open the inner space where faith becomes form. When you feel something with conviction, the subconscious accepts it as real, and everything it accepts as real, it begins to express. This is the invisible bridge between faith and manifestation. Faith doesn't convince God, it aligns you with his field. Because faith doesn't change what is, it changes who you are before what is. Every time you repeat a truth with emotion, it is engraved upon the subconscious. Every felt affirmation is a vibrational seed. That's why when you declare I am abundant, it's not about wealth, it's about permission. When you say I am peace, it's not about the absence of problems, it's about the presence of God. The word becomes flesh when the feeling agrees with it. The subconscious is living soil. It doesn't judge what you plant. If you plant fear, it blooms as insecurity. If you plant faith, it blooms as miracle. That's why inner vigilance is constant prayer, because every felt thought is a seed, and every repeated emotion is a future harvest. Say this with an awakened soul. What I accept, I create. What I vibrate, I manifest. What I believe, I become. It's not about effort, it's about consistency. Faith doesn't demand force, it demands persistence. Keep vibrating what you wish to live. Keep feeling what you wish to see. Because the subconscious doesn't understand time, it understands present. And everything you feel is real now, it begins to produce as form later. Think about it. When Jesus said, "Whatever you ask for in prayer, believing, you shall receive," he wasn't speaking of the future. He was describing a state. Believing is the present tense of faith, the active verb of trust. The moment your body vibrates what heaven has already decreed. Say now, with inner truth, my subconscious is the altar where God acts. I align myself with the divine will within me. Within me, there is no doubt, only surrender, because the subconscious is the field where the divine becomes human. It's where mind meets spirit, and the word becomes life. It's where promises turn into reality, not because God changes, but because you finally believe. And when the subconscious becomes altar, faith stops being effort and becomes breath. You begin to walk with ease, speak with power, and feel with truth. And life begins to respond differently, not because something outside has changed, but because something inside you has realigned itself with love. Affirm this with vibrant conviction. My mind is the temple, and my subconscious is the altar. My faith is the flame that keeps God's presence burning within me, and everything that vibrates in me manifests the divine will. Nothing is far, nothing is denied, nothing is separate. Everything is already within you, waiting for coherence, waiting for faith, waiting for vibration. God doesn't respond to pleading, he responds to tuning. And when the heart vibrates the same sound as heaven, what once seemed impossible begins to become inevitable. The way you see God defines everything you experience, because no one can open themselves to a love they do not believe in. And that is why so many pray, yet never feel the answer, because they imagine a distant God, watching from afar, measuring merit, deciding who is worthy and who is not. But God is not outside of you. He is the breath within. He is the silent presence dwelling inside, waiting to be recognized. Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is within you." That wasn't a metaphor. It was literal. God is not the power outside of you. He is the life within you. And everything changes when that truth stops being a concept and becomes perception. When you realize you're not trying to reach God, you're learning to let him manifest through you. As long as you believe God is distant, your vibration is one of lack. And lack never creates. It only repeats emptiness. But when you understand that he is constant presence, the vibration shifts. Prayer stops being a request and becomes communion. The soul stops searching and begins to rest. The way you feel God determines the way you feel life. If you believe in a God who judges, you'll live in guilt. If you believe in a God who punishes, you'll live in fear. But if you believe in a God who dwells, you'll begin to live in freedom. Because when you understand that he is not testing you, he is expanding you. Everything inside you reorganizes. Faith is the consciousness of unity. It's not waiting for heaven to descend, it's realizing heaven is already within. That the answer you seek is already vibrating in your soul, waiting for the moment you finally stop doubting. Say with an open heart, God is not outside of me, he is life within me. The divine presence is my very breath. Love does not observe me, love inhabits me. When the heart understands this, fear loses its function. Anxiety quiets, the need to control dissolves, because you stop trying to convince God and start trusting what he already is within you. The Spirit does not manifest to prove something to you. He manifests when you vibrate the same frequency of love that created you. True faith is not supplication, it is resonance. Jesus did not plead in despair. He gave thanks in anticipation. He said, "Father, I thank you, for you have already heard me." He didn't wait for the miracle. He lived in the state where the miracle was already real, because the universe does not respond to scarcity. It responds to gratitude. Supplication vibrates lack. Gratitude vibrates wholeness. And every time you give thanks before seeing, the invisible begins to organize itself. Gratitude is the verb of mature faith. It's how the Spirit says to the universe, I have already recognized. God doesn't need you to beg. He needs you to align. Because supplication says, I don't have yet. Gratitude says, I have already received. And that vibration of spiritual possession is what turns the invisible into form. Say with an awakened soul, I stop asking and begin to thank. I stop fearing and begin to trust. I stop searching and begin to recognize. True prayer is not when you speak much. It's when you vibrate rightly. It's not made to convince heaven, but to remind your heart. It's the moment when your inner being opens and says, it is done. And that is when faith stops being theory and becomes biology, because the body feels, the body records, the body confirms what the spirit already knows. That is why when you enter peace, the body heals. When you feel love, the body blooms. When you vibrate trust, the body reorganizes. Joe Dispenza explains, the body becomes addicted to the emotions of the past. You may affirm, I am in faith, but if the body still vibrates fear, the old reality remains. That's why the miracle isn't just an idea, it's a frequency. The body must feel the future before it happens. Because feeling is creating. The body is the temple where faith becomes flesh. Jesus called this calling things that are not as though they already were. That is biological faith, the body aligning to the vibration of the promise, the DNA responding to the emotion of trust, the flesh agreeing with the spirit. God doesn't manifest outside of coherence. He manifests in the body that vibrates faith, in the mind that silences fear, in the heart that gives thanks before seeing. The body is the altar where the miracle reveals itself. Affirm with deep conviction, my body is the temple of divine manifestation. My heart vibrates gratitude before the evidence, and my spirit rests in the love that has already answered me. Faith doesn't seek signs, it is the sign. It is the state of consciousness that says to the universe, I have already recognized what is mine. And in that moment, circumstances only confirm what the spirit already knew. You don't need to understand the process. You just need to remain in the vibration of trust. Because the need for proof is the opposite of belief. Faith doesn't ask for guarantees. It becomes the guarantee. It walks through the absence of evidence, sustained by the conviction of the unseen. And that's where the power of God manifests. Control is the language of fear. Surrender is the language of faith. And when the mind yields, the spirit takes over. Nothing needs to be forced. Synchronicity begins to move. Pieces fall into place. Life flows. Because when the spirit governs, chaos becomes direction. Say with living awareness, I release control and receive direction. I leave effort and enter flow. I allow God to be God within me. Surrender is not giving up. It is permission. It's when you stop trying to do and start allowing heaven to move through you. It's the moment when logic bows to trust and the miracle stops coming from outside. It becomes a reflection of your new state of being. Faith is a vibrational habit. It's not a moment, it's a training of the soul. Just as a muscle strengthens through movement, faith strengthens through presence. Every time you choose gratitude without reason, you train the body for abundance. Every time you choose trust without proof, you retrain the soul for the miraculous. Faith doesn't grow through effort, it grows through the repetition of surrender. Bruce Lipton revealed that cells respond to their emotional environment. They thrive when bathed in love and shrink when surrounded by fear. Faith is the field where the cells remember who they are, the inner environment of healing, creation, and expansion. Say with conviction and tenderness, I live in the atmosphere of faith. My biology responds to the love that vibrates within me. I am a living field of divine manifestation. And when that vibration establishes itself, nothing outside you needs to change immediately. Because what changes within changes everything. Faith is not about seeing first, it's about feeling first. And everything that is felt with truth takes form in its divine timing. God doesn't give you what you ask for. He gives you what you believe. And when you truly believe, the request dissolves, because certainty becomes enough. Repeat now with an open heart. In Christ, I do not ask out of fear. I vibrate in faith. What I believe already is. What I am already exists. And what I vibrate manifests the will of God within me. There is a profound difference between praying and pleading. Pleading is born from separation. True prayer is born from communion. Pleading says, I need. Prayer says, I already am. While pleading vibrates lack, prayer vibrates presence. Many believe that faith means insisting, repeating, trying to convince heaven. But faith does not shout, it recognizes. It does not try to win God's favor. It rests in the knowing that favor is already in motion. Jesus didn't pray to be heard. He prayed because he knew he was heard. That's why he said, "Father, I thank you, for you have already heard me." That is the vibration of "it is done," the frequency of those who live in certainty, even before seeing evidence. Pleading is born from the fear of being alone. Prayer flows from the certainty of union. Pleading tries to reach out. Prayer awakens what already exists. And it is in that awakening that the invisible becomes matter. Every time you ask in desperation, the universe reads, "I do not have," and what you believe you do not have remains absent. But when you give thanks with conviction before seeing, the vibration changes. Faith is not an attempt to convince God. It is the purest way to remember who you are in Him, because faith is not asking for something to come. It is recognizing that something has already been given. There is a difference between speaking to God and vibrating God. Speech is the language of the mind. Vibration is the language of the soul. The mind speaks of what it wants. The soul vibrates what it already believes. And the universe responds to vibration, not to phrasing. That's why true prayer isn't ritual. It's resonance. It's not about what you say, but about what you emanate. When your vibration becomes coherent with faith, the miracle has no choice. It happens. Because God doesn't need persuasion. He needs permission. And permission is born when fear goes silent and gratitude begins to speak. Gratitude before seeing is the greatest declaration of faith there is. It is the moment when the soul steps ahead of time and says, "I already recognize." Gratitude anticipates the miracle because it vibrates the same sound as the love that created the universe. God doesn't operate through emotional pity, but through vibrational coherence. He responds to the sound of faith, not to the noise of lack. Pleading tries to call God. Prayer awakens God within. Pleading tries to reach heaven. Prayer perceives that heaven already inhabits the heart. When you pray in faith, there is no anxiety, there is rest. The mind stops running, the body slows, and the heart rests in certainty. Faith is not noise, it is silent conviction. It is the sound of the soul saying, "It is done." Now let these words become vibration within you. Feel, with deep awareness, the weight and the lightness of this truth, and speak from an awakened heart, not as repetition, but as recognition. I do not ask out of fear. I vibrate in faith. I do not beg for presence. I rest in it. I do not wait for the miracle. I am the miracle in motion. I do not pray to convince God. I pray to remember who I am in Him. Every prayer spoken in gratitude creates a new reality, because gratitude is the frequency of creation, and everything that vibrates gratitude vibrates expansion. You do not need to plead for what already exists. You simply need to awaken to the awareness that love has already answered you. And when love is recognized, the miracle ceases to be a promise and becomes presence. The body is the mirror of the soul. It reveals what the mind still tries to hide. While the mouth says, "I trust," the body responds with what it truly believes. Faith doesn't happen only in words. It happens in the cells, in the breath, in the beating of the heart, because the body feels long before the mind understands. You may declare, "I believe," but if your chest feels tight, if your stomach contracts, if the air feels heavy, the body is whispering, there is still fear here. And God, who speaks the language of truth, does not respond to speech. He responds to vibration. That is why so many prayers seem to never rise from the ground. The body is still vibrating the past while the mouth tries to affirm the future. Joe Dispenza explains that the body is a living archive of emotional memories. It learned to move according to pain, loss, and old beliefs. Even when you want to change, the body keeps repeating familiar sensations. It has become addicted to the emotions of survival, fear, doubt, anxiety, guilt. And as long as the body vibrates the old, the new has no room to be born. Faith is the opposite of that addiction. Faith is the act of teaching the body to feel the future before it happens. It is bringing into the present the vibration of what has not yet manifested. It is awakening the body to the reality of the promise. Jesus called this calling things that are not as though they already were. It is not a metaphor, it is a vibrational law. When the body begins to feel peace before the solution, the mind understands. It's already done. And the universe responds to that coherence. Because when faith is complete, it reorganizes biology. Dopamine, the hormone of purpose, begins to flow. Oxytocin, the hormone of connection, awakens. Cortisol, the hormone of fear, falls silent. And suddenly, the body that once lived in alert begins to vibrate trust. That is the moment when prayer descends from the head to the heart. That is when the word becomes flesh. It's not positive thinking that changes the body. It's coherence. The alignment between what you think and what you feel. When the mind and the heart speak the same language, the body aligns. And that alignment creates the field where miracles take form. Perhaps you've asked yourself, why do I pray and still feel tired? Why do I declare and still feel no peace? The answer is simple and profound. The body is still trapped in survival mode. It still reacts as if the past were the present. But there is a way back, the way of presence. Every time you breathe consciously, give thanks without reason, or choose to trust without proof, you are teaching your body to believe. You are reprogramming the biology of faith. Now, close the circuit of this truth within yourself. Feel the power of these words as if awakening something ancient and eternal. And say with intention, with presence, with body and soul, I teach my body to feel the future before it happens. I vibrate with the peace of one who has already overcome. I rest in the certainty that the spirit lives within me. My body is the altar where the miracle becomes matter. Feel the weight of this affirmation dissolving into light. Every cell, every muscle, every heartbeat responding to the frequency of trust. The body understands when the soul believes. And when the soul believes, the body heals. God does not need to come from the outside to perform a miracle. He only needs the temple, your body, to vibrate the truth he already declared. It is finished. Faith is a paradox. The more you try to prove that you believe, the less you actually do, because the act of proving is already born from doubt, and the spirit does not move through doubt. He moves through silent certainty. The human mind hungers for control. It wants to understand, measure, predict, ensure, but faith does not fit in that place. Faith begins where control ends. It is born in that sacred space where you no longer know what to do, but choose to trust anyway. There is a holy moment between the prayer and the miracle, and that moment is called trust. It is the moment when you hand over what you don't understand, and instead of trying to manipulate the process, you simply remain, because the invisible does not respond to force. It responds to surrender. The need to prove faith is often the mind's way of trying to feel safe, but faith does not seek safety. It is safety itself. It is the certainty that even when everything feels uncertain, God is still God. And it is in that place where logic falls silent that the supernatural begins to move. Doubt needs signs. Faith needs silence. Doubt says, show me so I can believe. Faith answers, I believe, and that's why I will see. Doubt leans on evidence. Faith rests on presence. There is something profoundly freeing about no longer needing to prove anything. When you stop trying to prove, the heart relaxes. And in the silence of surrender, power manifests. Because while the mind fights, the spirit waits. And when the mind grows quiet, the spirit acts. God never asked you to understand everything. He simply invited you to trust. It was this way with Abraham, who walked out not knowing where he was going. It was this way with Peter, who stepped onto the water. And it is this way with you every time you decide to take a step, even when you cannot see the ground. Faith is not the absence of fear. It is movement in the midst of it. The more you try to feel faith, the more it slips away. Because faith is not something to feel, it is something to remember. It doesn't come from outside. It rises from within. It isn't manufactured. It is remembered. You don't need to create faith. You need to remember that it already lives in you. The spirit of faith is the very breath of God inside the soul. It doesn't need proof, only permission. When you stop demanding signs, everything around you begins to align naturally. Situations adjust, answers arrive, and the heart becomes still, because control is resistance, but trust is flow. Faith is the natural state of the soul when it returns to hearing the voice of God. Now, breathe this truth in with awareness. And with all your heart, declare with deep conviction, not to convince heaven, but to awaken what already vibrates within. I do not need proof, for I already have presence. I do not seek signs, for I already walk in certainty. I do not try to feel faith. I remember that I am faith in motion. What I don't understand, I trust. What I trust fulfills itself. Faith is the sound of surrender. It is the moment when the human falls silent and the divine takes over. It is the instant when the invisible becomes inevitable. Because the miracle is not an event, it is the result of trust that remains when fear wants to give up. God is not testing your faith, He is expanding your understanding. And expansion only happens when control dissolves. This is the paradox of faith. The less you try to see, the more you begin to perceive. And the more you surrender, the more you realize you were never alone. There is a kind of faith that looks like faith, but isn't. It's performative faith, the one that wears beautiful words but trembles with fear inside. The faith that speaks loudly, yet doubts in silence. It's the spiritual ego dressed as devotion, trying to sound convinced when all it really wants is to be accepted. The ego wants to be seen as enlightened, as someone who has faith. But true faith doesn't need to prove anything, doesn't need to justify itself, nor be displayed. Because faith is not a performance, it is essence. It's not a stage. It's an altar. Faith doesn't need to show strength. It is strength in silence. Many speak of faith, yet live on alert. They declare victory, but their hearts vibrate anxiety. They speak of trust, yet sleep in fear. And the body, wise as it is, reveals that dissonance. Because faith doesn't live in appearance, it lives in coherence. And where there is incoherence, there is noise. Jesus never needed to prove he believed. He slept through the storm. While the disciples panicked, he rested. Because those who truly believe do not react, they rest. They do not compete, they trust. They do not display, they radiate. Faith doesn't need a stage because its strength doesn't come from human approval, but from divine presence. There is a generation exhausted from appearing spiritual, people tired of holding an image of peace while waging a war inside. But God is not impressed by performance. He responds to authenticity. The prayer that moves heaven is not the most eloquent one. It's the most honest one. Not the one that sounds perfect, but the one that rises raw from the depths of the soul, even in silence. The spiritual ego tries to control even the way it believes. It turns faith into a goal, spirituality into an identity, and prayer into a display. But the spirit moves where he wills. And when he moves, the ego falls silent. Because the presence of God does not require performance, it requires surrender. You don't have to look strong all the time. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to maintain the image of balance when your soul is longing for rest. Faith is not the absence of vulnerability. It is walking through it with trust. It is admitting, I'm tired, but I still believe. I'm afraid, but I keep walking. I don't know how, but I know in whom I trust. Performative faith shouts. True faith whispers. Performative faith wants to prove. True faith wants to surrender. Performative faith seeks applause. True faith seeks presence. And God dwells where there is truth, not where there is appearance. Now let this truth travel from the mind to the heart. Feel the difference between showing faith and living faith, and declare with living conviction, letting your voice carry the sound of surrender. I don't need to prove my faith. I simply live it. I don't need to look like light. I am light. Even in shadow. I don't need to show strength. I am sustained by grace. My faith is not a stage. It is a path, a home, a presence. True faith is not measured by the volume of the voice, but by the peace in the silence. And it's in that silence that God speaks. It's in that silence that the soul understands. It's not about appearing, it's about being. Not about being seen, but about seeing. And those who see with the heart are already living by faith. God is not looking for the perfect, he is looking for the present. And when he finds you present, whole, honest, vulnerable, that's where the miracle happens. Because heaven does not respond to performance. Heaven responds to truth. There comes a point in the journey when thinking no longer helps. The mind has already run through every path, calculated every outcome, rehearsed every prayer, and nothing changes. It's at that point that many give up. But it's exactly there that the spirit begins. The mind tries to understand. The spirit simply knows. The mind seeks control. The spirit seeks surrender. And there is a vast distance between the two. While the mind asks how, the spirit whispers trust. While the mind looks for proof, the spirit offers presence. And when the heart finally surrenders, something invisible begins to move. Surrender is a sacred act. It isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the moment when the human acknowledges its limits and the divine takes the lead. It's when you stop trying to make things work and start allowing them to blossom in their own sacred time. Surrender is the bridge between effort and grace, the moment when the mind grows quiet so the spirit can speak. Neuroscience calls this expanded coherence, the instant when the brain leaves survival mode and aligns with the quantum field. But spiritually, it has another name. Mature faith, the kind of faith that no longer needs control. The faith that understands that to trust is the greatest act of power. When the mind surrenders, the body changes, the breath slows, the heart rests. The energy once spent in resistance turns into peace. It's what the Bible calls the peace that surpasses understanding. Because the mind does not produce it, it allows it. You don't need to know the way to keep walking. You only need to trust that the path already recognizes you. Sometimes the miracle is not a change of scenery. It's a change of frequency. The outer world adjusts when the inner world yields. The mind wants to explain the process, but the spirit simply manifests it. Everything you try to control slips away, but everything you surrender blooms. Because surrender is not weakness, it is alignment. And God can only move fully where there is space. A full mind cannot hear, but a surrendered heart can even hear silence. Now let these words move through your soul. Don't just understand, feel. There is a presence calling you to rest, to stop wrestling with the invisible. And in this moment, with humility and power, declare with full intention, I release control and allow the spirit to guide me. I stop resisting and begin to flow. My mind grows quiet. My heart listens. I don't need to understand. I simply trust. Do you feel the shift? The body knows. The heart knows. Because the spirit always knew. And when the spirit takes over, everything aligns. Time, people, paths, and answers. Nothing needs to be forced anymore. Everything begins to unfold at the rhythm of grace. Control is a weight. Surrender is a bridge. And every time you choose to surrender, heaven finds a way to move. Because faith is not an effort, it is a state. And in that state, the impossible ceases to be theory and becomes breath. So let the mind rest. Allow the spirit to lead. Because when the mind surrenders, the miracle doesn't arrive, it emerges. From within, from where God has always been. Faith is not a moment, it's a state. It isn't something that happens once in a while, only when everything goes right. It's a vibration that must be cultivated every day until it becomes your nature. Because true faith is not born from the mind, it's born from presence. The mind wants results. The spirit wants consistency. And it's in the constancy of presence that faith matures. Just as a muscle must be exercised, faith must be felt, lived, and breathed. It's not about repeating phrases, but about creating an inner atmosphere of trust. It's what spiritual neuroscience calls a vibrational habit, the training of the soul to remain coherent even when the world seems to fall apart. Have you noticed how easy it is to believe when everything flows, but how hard it is to trust when silence arrives? That's because the mind was trained to associate faith with outcome. But true faith lives in the interval between the prayer and the manifestation. It's the calm voice that says, even without seeing, I remain. Faith is not proven in victory, but in the crossing. The practice of faith is a deep reprogramming. Each time you choose trust over fear, you are sending a new command to your subconscious. Each time you feel gratitude before the evidence, you are teaching your body to vibrate in the frequency of the future you desire. That's how the biology of faith works. The body responds to the dominant emotion. Bruce Lipton proved it. Your cells don't obey what you say, they obey what you feel. That's why the training of faith begins with small internal choices. It's not about changing the outer world. It's about changing the tone of what vibrates within. And when the vibration changes, the field around you responds. Everything begins to align, not because the scene changed, but because you changed frequency. Faith is the practice of keeping your heart lifted, even when the ground feels far away. It's looking at chaos and saying, this too serves my good. When you wake up and choose to give thanks without a reason, you are reprogramming the mind for abundance. When you take a deep breath in the midst of fear, you are teaching the body to remain in peace. When you release the past, you are cleansing the energetic field of faith. Faith is practice. Faith is persistence. Faith is presence. And every act of presence is a prayer without words. Now, bring that awareness inward. Feel what these words awaken in you, and say out loud as one who seals a covenant with their own heart. I choose to remain in faith, even when I cannot see. I train my body to feel love before the answer arrives. I practice gratitude until it becomes my nature. I vibrate coherence. I vibrate trust. I vibrate presence. Do you feel the shift? That vibration is real. It starts invisible, but soon it touches the field, the circumstances, the people, the flow. Because everything sustained in faith begins to reorganize around you. God responds to constancy. The universe responds to coherence, and the body responds to peace. Faith is not a passing emotion, it's a vibrational habit. It grows through repetition, blooms through surrender, and becomes solid through presence. And the more you practice, the less you need to try. Faith becomes breath, and to breathe is to remember, God is here. There comes a point in the journey where asking ends and believing begins. A point where words become unnecessary because the soul has already learned the language of the spirit. God does not respond to the intensity of the request, but to the vibration of certainty. And when the heart vibrates certainty, heaven recognizes the sound. Bruce Lipton proved through science what Jesus revealed through truth. Your cells don't hear what you say, they feel what you believe. And the Bible confirms, whatever you ask for in prayer, believing, you shall receive. The key was never in asking, it was always in believing. Because faith doesn't convince God, faith aligns you with Him. Faith isn't to move heaven, it's to move you. When your vibration harmonizes with divine love, everything that belongs to you by essence finds its way back to you. There is no struggle, there is no rush, there is only flow. Many spend a lifetime asking for healing, asking for love, asking for direction, but the spirit doesn't respond to need, he responds to frequency. And as long as prayer comes from lack, its vibration remains scarcity. But when prayer comes from fullness, its vibration becomes creation. When you pray from fear, the universe hears absence. When you pray from gratitude, the universe recognizes presence. That's why true prayer is not supplication, it's alignment. It's when the heart rests in it is done. The moment you stop asking for what's outside and begin to manifest what already exists within. The vibration of certainty isn't arrogance, it's alignment. It's knowing the promise isn't future, it's eternal. It's trusting that the invisible has already moved in your favor. And while the world still arranges itself, your heart is already celebrating. Now, let these words move through you. Feel what it means to live in vibration of faith, not of waiting. And say with a heart awakened, with deep truth, as one who seals an eternal covenant with their own soul, I do not ask from fear. I vibrate in faith. What I believe already is. What I am already exists. And what I vibrate manifests the will of God within me. This is the vibration of certainty, the frequency where faith and love become one sound. It is the point where the mind rests and the spirit takes over. And in this state, miracles stop being requests and start becoming results. Now close the eyes of your mind, open the heart of your soul, and enter prayer with me. Lord, here we are, whole, vulnerable, and true. You know every fold of our hearts, every memory that still weighs heavy, every hope that still pulses. Receive now what we didn't know how to give before. Receive the hidden fear, the old guilt, the hurry that tired our soul. Turn it all into light. Where there is shadow, bring understanding. Where there is hardness, pour tenderness. Where there is noise, establish peace. Father of love, we align our breath to your rhythm. Take our minds, make them dwellings of peace. Take our hearts, make them altars of trust. Take our bodies, make them living temples of your presence. We do not ask out of desperation. We believe out of conviction. We do not beg from lack. We give thanks from fullness. In you, promises are already fulfilled. In you, the invisible already has a destiny in our hands. Living Christ dwelled within us with the gentleness that calms storms. Teach us to give thanks before the evidence, to rest in the it is finished that your love has already spoken over us. Touch memories that still hurt and rewrite them with wisdom. Touch beliefs that limit us and expand them with truth. Touch habits that enslave us and replace them with presence. May our vibration agree with heaven, mind, and heart in one sound, faith and emotion in one melody. Holy Spirit, sustain us in the everyday. In the simple moments, remind us who we are in you. In the line, in traffic, at work, at home, make life a sanctuary. Let every cell hear your voice and respond with health. Let every decision hear your direction and respond with wisdom. Let every relationship hear your goodness and respond with forgiveness. We declare, with humility and authority, we do not need to control, we choose to trust. We do not need to prove, we choose to remain. We do not need to rush, we choose to dwell. Where there is anxiety, install your peace. Where there is scarcity, install your gratitude. Where there is resistance, install your surrender. And in the silence that follows this prayer, may your love be louder than any thought. In the name of Jesus, we seal what we have received. What was born in faith will mature in faith. What was aligned in the invisible will become visible in the perfect time. So we pray, so we believe, so we live. Amen. Now say with me, as one declaring to the universe and to your own spirit, I vibrate faith, not fear. I give thanks before I see. I rest in the presence that sustains me. What I believe already is. What I vibrate manifests. In Christ, my mind and my heart are one. If this message touched your soul, write in the comments, I vibrate faith. I live in certainty. Share it with someone who needs peace today. Maybe this word is God's way of reaching another heart through you. And before you leave, receive this final blessing. Peace to your heart. May the presence of Christ surround you like a soft mantle. May your breath find the rhythm of grace. May joy become the language of your soul. May love dwell in your thoughts and hope find home in your body. You are not alone. You are loved. You are seen. You are held. And may your life be the living testimony that God responds to the vibration of certainty. It is done.